Stand Your Ground, Florida's controversial self-defense law, at the center of the Trayvon Martin shooting. It is in the crosshairs. That is 18-member task force has assembled in the state here to examine that very law, and they got an earful at a public hearing last night. Florida's Prosecuting Attorneys Association calling for an immediate repeal of the law that they say is way too ambiguous. Among those attending the hearing, Trayvon Martin's uncle, who believes his nephew should still be alive.
I think we need to adjust it.
Ronald Fulton has learned much more than he could have imagined over the past few weeks about Florida's Stand Your Ground law. His nephew was Trayvon Martin, the symbolic face of a movement pushing to get the legislation changed.
First of all, he wasn't committing a felony. He wasn't doing anything but walking to the store. And nobody should be confronted or anything like that for just simply walking to the store.
Last night, Fulton joined dozens of other concerned citizens as South Florida's legal minds discuss the hot-button issue. From Miami-Dade's assistant state attorney to Fort Lauderdale's police chief, a panel of experts weighed in on the pros and the cons of the law.
The Stand Your Ground legislation is not unclear. It's a very clear piece of legislation.
The law allows someone who feels their life is being threatened to respond with deadly force and not be arrested or charged with a crime. A self-defense claim similar to the one volunteer night watch Captain George Zimmerman used on the night that he shot and killed 70-year-old Trayvon Martin, who was unarmed. Zimmerman's voice is heard on 911 calls to dispatchers as they warn him not to confront the teen.
If you initiate contact or if you start the fight, you should at least go in front of a jury and present your evidence and let peers decide, not some big veil that you're not even able to be arrested.
Now, Florida is hardly the only state with Stand Your Ground laws on the books. At least 20 other states, that's right, in the U.S. have similar laws that allows the use of deadly force to prevent, quote-unquote, imminent death or great bodily harm. All right, we're going to talk about this and so much more relating to this case to begin with tonight. And join us to discuss the case, Reverend W Franklin Richardson. He's the executive director of Al Sharpton's National Action Network and also the senior pastor of the Grace Baptist Church in Mount Vernon, New York. And as always, I should say, we're joined by political journalist and blogger Dominic Carter. Guys, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Well, Reverend, let's take where we are in the calendar here and apply it to this case, because obviously Easter, the highest of holy days, and you're going to be a very busy man, not just today, Good Friday, but through the weekend. I'm curious, in your homily, will Trayvon Martin's name come up?
Yes. However, I'm very careful not to be focused only on Trayvon Martin, because the problem is systemic. As you mentioned just now, 20 states have the law. But more than that, in this metropolitan community in New York, we have cases where young men have been killed by persons who were either law enforcement or similar as the Zimmerman persons, who go in and we have Ramali Graham right here in the Bronx. Police went in and killed him, his grandmother watching, and we still don't have any kind of charges or arrest regarding that, and has not yet been disclosed the investigation. So the problem is not hoodies. The problem is not just Trayvon Martin. It's what's happening to the attitudinal culture of our country, where one, African American men are threatened. Two, where the value of human life, even because it's not a one-sided coin. It's blacks killing blacks, and it's others killing blacks. And this is a real serious problem that we got to get our hands around, and not just shoot at the Band-Aid. Trayvon Martin is very serious, but it's indicative of a larger problem. It's also seemingly, Dominic, opened up a whole dialogue here. And in the last month, the kind of conversations that are happening, and for people, this has been a raw wound here, that it's opened up all kinds of conversation about race, about justice, and all the things in between that people don't want to talk about. I'm curious, before and after your services, what are some of the conversations that you're hearing from people, both young and old, both men and women here, that come to you and say... It's generally thought that this case in Florida is one that is driven by racism. It is often compared to the Emmett Till case. Not just the racism of the guy who pulls the gun, but a system who tolerates and accommodates this situation. I mean, it was 3 days before his mother knew he was dead. He was in the coroner's office for 3 days, so similar to Emmett Till. So we, these kind of things where the system collaborates and covers up and makes it easier for them. So the racism, that's what people talk about.
Well, Pastor, let me just ask you this question, because I know that you have knowledge that the general public does not, as the president of the board of the National Action Network, which is very involved with this case, Reverend Sharpton and so on. But I just wanted to confirm that. And I'm so glad that you also pointed out that this is not just about Trayvon Martin. It's also about black-on-black crime.
No question about it.
But are you telling me with a straight face, are you telling Richard with a straight face that indeed it was actually, because I know it was reported, it was actually 3 days before Trayvon's mother's
according
mother?
to the information that we have.
3 days she didn't know where her child was.
Right. He was in the coroner's possession.
You know, I'm not sure everybody saw this clip because I happened to see this a couple mornings ago on CNN. But to me, it said a lot. And guys, if we could, the clip from the morning show where the former member of the Neighborhood Watch, in fact, the former head of the Neighborhood Watch, he was trying to give a rationale for why Zimmerman did what he did. And I think, for me at least, more than raised an eyebrow. Let's take a listen.
We had 8 burglaries in our neighborhood, all perpetrated by young black males in the 15 months prior to Trayvon being shot.
So
one of those, it would have been 9. Excuse me, there would have been 9, but George Zimmerman, through his efforts of being a neighborhood watch captain, helped stop one in progress.
Let's talk about the 8 prior ones.
Yep.
You said that of the 8 prior ones, they were perpetrated by young black men. How many of those cases did they arrest people? How many of those cases were people actually convicted?
One I know where the perpetrator was apprehended. It was a daylight robbery in January of this year. The young black male went in during the daytime, just 2 houses down from where my place was. And he was apprehended 5 days later.
So it sounds to me like you're saying that it made sense to you that George Zimmerman would be fearful of young black men.
No, it would be consistent that the perpetrators were all of the young black male ID.
Say that one more time.
That's a fact.
What do you mean? It would be consistent? I don't understand what you're saying.
All of the perpetrators of the burglaries, the prior burglaries, were young black males.
And so when he saw Trayvon Martin, in your mind, it would make perfect sense to say he's a young black male. He probably is Robert. Is that what you're saying?
Well, you know, there's an old saying that if you plant corn, you get corn.
I don't know that saying, so I'm going to have to ask you to tell me what that means. If you plant corn, you get corn. What does that mean in this case?
It is what it is. It is what it is. I would go on record by stating that of the 8 prior burglaries in the 15 months prior to the Trayvon Martin shooting, all of the perpetrators were young black males.
And you know what, to me, I don't think that's just one guy who's saying that. You think you got church down in Florida, you've been as involved in this as anybody. Is this a Sanford, Florida problem, or could this happen right around your church, here in New York?
Could happen anywhere. Could happen anywhere. I would say this, though. I've had some experience in Florida. I believe that the Florida judicial system is more hostile to black men than any system I've seen. There is in Fort Pierce, which is the seat of the county. If you go in Fort Pierce, there's more law offices, lawyers' offices in Fort Pierce than any other business. I mean, it's loaded. There's a thriving legal economy. that rest on black boys being convicted and staying in the prison system in, and you know, Michelle Alexander talks about this in her book.